you and I were sitting around. We were at Towson University, as I recall.
I think that's exactly correct.
Having a conversation about how in the world can you convey the magnitude of the deficit. I was bemoaning to you the fact that that every time I try and describe to someone the magnitude of the debt or the deficit, and I use an analogy, the analogy itself is so huge as to be not understandable. You almost need an analogy to explain the analogy to get to the deficit or the debt. And so you and I were talking, and we came up with this idea of Deficit Day as an analog to Tax Freedom Day. So we came up with this idea of Deficit Day, the same kind of thing. Hypothetical day, imagine that the federal government received all of the money it was going to receive for the year, from all taxes, payroll taxes, capital gains taxes, everything all combined. It received the whole chunk of money on January 1st and then started spending it at an even pace throughout the rest of the year. When would the money run out? Now, ideally, the money would last all the way to December 31st, and that would be a balanced budget. But if the money runs out before December 31st, well, then from that point forward, you got to borrow money to pay for your spending.
And, you know, a lot of years when we do Deficit Day, we find that it hits in October, November, end of the year kind of stuff, right? So you're doing, well, better than you might think, given how politicians spend money.
Yeah,
but other years it falls much earlier.
It did, and that the earliest it's fallen in recent times was during the 2008 housing crisis, and of course we had all of that stimulus spending that was going on, and Deficit Day backed up as early as August 5th at the worst of that. But apart from that, typically speaking, over the past 20 years, 30 years, Deficit Day has occurred in the last quarter, September, October, November, somewhere in there, until this year.
Yeah, this year makes that housing crash seem like child's play.
This year is astounding on a number of levels. One thing that's happening this year, and remember that the year's not up. We may get more rounds of stimulus spending, which we're going to have to come back and do another episode and correct ourselves and say, no, Deficit Day actually occurred even earlier than we had estimated. But given what's happened thus far, the federal government is for the first time, I guess, since World War II, the federal government's deficit is actually higher than its tax revenues.
Oh, boy.
And
this isn't going to end well. And you don't have to be good at math to know that this isn't going to end well.
If you run the numbers as they currently exist, Deficit Day this year occurs on June 21st.